Hello, I'm Luis Manuel Torrejon, a senior BAM student, and today I'll be reporting on my research proposal entitled Documentation of COVID-19 Pandemic Impacts on People Diagnosed with Mental Illness, Development of an Interactive Magazine. In retrospect, mental health has been receiving its due importance in recent years. There are finally people who see it as a valid aspect of human life, although this has not always been the case. In fact, mental health was instead regarded as mental hygiene in the 19th century to connote that mental unwellness translated to being mentally dirty. Because such stigma surrounds individuals clinically diagnosed with mental illness, there has been hesitance to its societal acceptance. In light of current events, it has been a collective plea how the COVID-19 pandemic has negatively impacted mental health. This is evidenced by the rising number of calls to the National Center of Mental Health Crisis Hotline, with callers citing anxiety and depression directly caused by the pandemic as their reason for calling. The number of calls has jumped from less than 400 calls per month in May, June, and July of 2019 to more than 1,000 calls per month in May, June, and July of 2020. Because 50% of mental illness begins by age 14, it is imperative to prioritize mental health in conjunction with physical health. According to SingleCare, mental illness affects 13% of the world's population, and the trend is predicted to only rise as populations grow and the factors that affect mental illnesses remain. As mental health is slowly being regarded by society as an essential part of the human person, it is necessary to take steps towards the improvement and maintenance of mental health, regardless of age, race, creed, social class, gender, political beliefs, and sexual preference. But due to the social distancing guidelines implemented internationally preventing general social interaction and physical appointments with mental health professionals, is it really possible to maintain a healthy mind amidst the COVID-19 stress that affects everybody? If people who are undiagnosed with mental illness are struggling through everyday life caused by the pandemic, can it be deduced that the COVID-19 pandemic is negatively affecting clinically diagnosed individuals on a greater scale? The researcher aims to publish an interactive magazine that focuses on the subjective experience of mental illness during the COVID-19 pandemic from the point of view of the individuals clinically diagnosed with mental illness. The researcher is interested to understand the severity of the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on the mental health of said individuals. Many articles, documentaries, and studies have been undertaken to try to help enlighten people on mental illness experiences. But most of these are conducted by people who execute these from an indifferent standpoint, mainly that of a media professional. The researcher aims to portray mental illness from the point of view of a person diagnosed with a mental illness. The researcher aims to discover and observe the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the mental health of clinically diagnosed individuals, specifically to answer the following questions. How do people diagnosed with mental illness cope during the COVID-19 pandemic? How can it be possible to ethically portray mental illness through an interactive magazine? And how do the factors caused by the COVID-19 pandemic affect clinically diagnosed individuals negatively or positively? This practice-based research project is meant to evaluate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the mental health of clinically diagnosed mental health sufferers. The data gathered in the study may be relevant to the following sectors of society. The general public. The study's results may shed light on mental illness for the general knowledge of the public so that they may perceive mental health sufferers without fear. Media professionals. The content of the multimedia product could guide media professionals to portray mental health sufferers in a more ethical manner. And mental health professionals. The study's results may prompt mental health professionals to allow face-to-face consultations adherent to health protocols and develop programs that improve the well-being of their patients during the pandemic. Physical health has indeed taken the forefront of everybody's priorities with the dawn of the COVID-19 pandemic having happened almost overnight. But another important aspect of humanity has also been affected by the coronavirus, albeit indirectly. Although COVID-19 does not show any symptoms pertaining to mental illnesses, these may have been triggered by the pandemic itself, which is especially stressful for people. Because people are afraid of contracting the disease, we maintain socially distant from others, and the CDC posits that this can end up making people feel isolated and lonely. L. Robinson and M. Smith mention how human beings are social creatures that need companionship of others to thrive in life, and the strength of our connections has a huge impact on our mental health and happiness. This companionship is made more difficult, especially in the recent community guidelines for social distancing all around the world. For the variables of the study, the controlled variable is the kind of participants. Only participants clinically diagnosed with mental illness. The independent variable is the mental illness of the participants, including but not limited to bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, schizophrenia, and etc. And the dependent variable is the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the mental health of the participants. For the type of research, the researcher will be utilizing the practice-based method because it will more effectively portray the content that the researcher is interested to express through the research. For this research study, the process will be divided into 3 phases. Phase 1 is a collection of data from participants through Google Forms. Phase 2 is a collection of data from participants through interviews. And Phase 3, development of the chosen multimedia product, an interactive magazine. Through the utility of this research design, the researcher will observe and document the data to answer the study's research questions. The researcher will develop a Google Form questionnaire sent to individuals clinically diagnosed with mental illness to contribute towards the collection of quantitative data. The Google Form will include a question whether the respondent is willing to be interviewed. For the respondents that are willing to be interviewed, the researcher will conduct interviews to aid towards the collection of qualitative data on the subjective experiences of the COVID-19 pandemic's effect on the interviewee's mental health. After this, the researcher will compile an interactive magazine that illustrates the data gathered. Through this method, the researcher aims to acquire the following data: the psychosocial diagnosis of the participant, the recurring emotion felt by the participant caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, the methods by which the participant copes through the COVID-19 pandemic, the view of the participant on the COVID-19 pandemic, and the participant's sense of connection with other people during the pandemic. Ethical considerations for this research that will be maintained are the following: informed consent, voluntary participation, do no harm, confidentiality, anonymity, and only assess relevant components. The researcher hypothesizes that the COVID-19 pandemic indeed has a negative impact on the mental health of clinically diagnosed individuals based on these factors: social isolation, social media as a coping mechanism, stress caused by fear of contracting the virus, financial instability, inability to attend face-to-face sessions with mental health professionals, and COVID claustrophobia. Because these individuals are predisposed to being mentally unhealthy based on their history of mental illness, the researcher believes that there is a greater chance for them to experience poor mental health, as the COVID-19 pandemic has made aforementioned factors more plausible. Through the development and publishing of the interactive magazine, the researcher hopes to shed light on the problems that clinically diagnosed individuals face and raise awareness to the general public to quell stigma, influence the acceptance of mental illness as being normal, and to impel people to seek professional help from mental health professionals. Thank you for watching and have a great day.